Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, and press the bell icon so that the next time the episode comes up, you get a notification. We are very different and we're both men, but his idea of being a man is this.
तू मर्द है, मर्द बन के रह यार.
ये लाइनें मैंने सुनी है कि क्या लड़कियों की तरह रोता है.
So what? So it's kind of like a slap to the society.
What about, the hair down there?
अरे यार आइडिया ऑफ ब्यूटी जो सोसाइटी ने दिया हुआ है ना कि यू शुड लुक लाइक दिस.
Hello everyone, this is Ankush Bahuguna and you have tuned into yet another episode of The Gentleman Show by The Man Company, जहाँ पे हम हर उस एस्पेक्ट के बारे में बात करते हैं जो हमारी लाइफ से बहुत क्लोजली जुड़ा होता है, जिसके बारे में हम बहुत सोचते हैं लेकिन कभी बात नहीं करते. आज का एपिसोड शायद बहुत इंसाइटफुल हो या तो काफ़ी इमोशनल. इट कुड जस्ट बी एन इमोशनल रोलर कोस्टर बिकॉज टुडे वी आर गोना टॉक अबाउट मेंटल हेल्थ, इमोशनल ब्रेकडाउन्स एंड ग्रीफ. एंड ये सारी बातें आसानी से कभी बाहर आती नहीं हैं. तो आई वॉन्ट यू ऑल टू मेक योर सेल्फ सम कॉफ़ी, सिट इन अ कोजी कॉर्नर, गेट कम्फर्टेबल बिकॉज ये वाला थोड़ा आराम से सुनने वाला एपिसोड है. एंड टुडे वी हैव विद अस टू वेरी स्पेशल गेस्ट्स, स्टैंड अप कॉमेडियन जीवेशु एंड साइकोलॉजिस्ट दिविजा बसीन. हाय.
Thank you guys. Hi.
Hi.
Okay, so let's get started.
Yes sir.
Okay, so Jeeveshu, I know that आपके पास बहुत कुछ है इस टॉपिक में ऐड करने को, but are you nervous about talking about it or?
No, I stopped giving. The first rule of mental health is put yourself first. Prioritize yourself. When you prioritize, I don't care about anybody else.
I think we've started with a great lesson. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and a lot of people, like, this is what therapy also teaches you, right? That your mental health is a very important aspect and you need to give it as much importance as you can. And दिविजा, मुझे एक बात बताओ यार, ये साइकोलॉजिस्ट और साइकाइट्रिस्ट के बीच में डिफरेंस क्या होता है? लेट्स स्टार्ट फ्रॉम द बेसिक्स.
Yeah, so I think a lot of people don't know the
Yeah.
difference. So I'm really glad you asked this question.
Yeah.
A psychologist does therapy. So if you want therapy, go to a psychologist, and they can also diagnose you, a clinical psychologist to be precise. And a psychiatrist gives medicine. So usually they don't do therapy. So if you go to a psychiatrist and expect them to not give you medicine, that's not going to happen.
Okay, so then how do you decide कि आपको साइकोलॉजिस्ट के पास जाना है कि आपको साइकाइट्रिस्ट के पास जाना है?
So if you think you have a disorder, then you can go to a clinical psychologist or a psychiatrist. Clinical psychologist will give you therapy and diagnose you, and a psychiatrist will give you medicine. So if you are someone who can't really afford therapy and you don't think you have the capacity to go through like the whole deep issues and also pay for it, then I would suggest in India go to a psychiatrist because it'll give you a quick fix. I mean, it will.
Is there a quick fix for mental health?
No, not really. But then for a lot of people, medicine is necessary because
Right.
they have no option. Like therapy also doesn't work and maybe they can't afford it. Accessibility is a big issue here.
Right, exactly.
So it can help, yeah.
तो मतलब अगर मैं ये बात सही समझ रहा हूँ तो पहले आप यूजुअली एक साइकोलॉजिस्ट के पास जाते हो थेरेपी के लिए, एंड देन the psychologist tells you whether you need to go to a psychiatrist or not.
That's what I would suggest because medicine isn't for everyone. You don't always need medicine, and a clinical psychologist can tell you if they think you need a psychiatrist.
Right. And Jeeveshu, coming to you, have you ever seek therapy?
Yep.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay. And what was the experience like? Can you tell us?
A lot actually. See, mental health does not have a physical attribute largely. It's not on a broken bone. You're not bleeding. So it's very hard to see something and not take it seriously. In India, a lot of times going to therapy means you're pagal.
Right.
And it is looked down upon. Especially when you want to seek help and you can't, and you don't have an answer around what do you want to do, who do you go to, how to get help, is when therapy is needed. Why did I go to therapy? Because I was going through a phase in my life that I had no reasoning that I could put across in the way I was feeling about my life in general, which can be suicidal, which can be absolutely not able to get out of your bed. Now, issue with therapy or especially with mental health is that since it doesn't have a physical symptom to it, you're not bleeding, there is no broken bone, people don't see how impactful it is for a person in their mind. And It is tough to get out of bed. It is tough to even connect to somebody. You can be in the middle of the absolute busy market and feel absolutely lonesome. You see darkness around. And that thing is so underrated and so under-evolved in India. And I'm just talking about India because I am a citizen of India, so I wouldn't know about any other country. It will be very wrong for me to comment on that. That is when I was suggested I need to go seek therapy. And people like Divija mentioned, she's a psychologist. There are clinical psychologists as well. They get trained to understand, in a nutshell, how do I put it? They're trained, they're educated, they're practiced enough to understand a deeper meaning behind a thought process which is pulling you down. Because when we're happy, हम तो मंदिर नहीं जाते तो therapy पे तो क्या ही जाएंगे हम. So that is what a clinical psychologist or a psychologist or a therapist will do for you. And then accordingly, you take further steps of either talking about it,
Right.
seeking medical help, like she said, going to psychiatrist, can be anything, mood stabilizers. There are a lot of things. It's such a varied concept.
Right.
You take medicine if you're prescribed for medicines, and you do activities when they tell you how to disconnect, how to connect, write things. Million things. Therapy is not. It's like different strokes for different folks. So that's what led me to it, and I've never been happier, or I've never been more thankful about the things in life that I should have
Known earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I used to stand on the rooftop of my house and look down, and it's like, if I jump today, I'll end it. And that is what I wanted to do. And that's a thought which crosses to, I think, everybody's mind at least once in their life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that a lot of our listeners would also, some of them could. I hope nobody ever relates to this, but I'm sure that mental health के बारे में अभी भी उतनी बात होती नहीं है जितनी होनी चाहिए. And these are things that we bottle up inside us. Like a lot of people feel these things, like what if I die today? What if what is the reason of my existence? मैं क्यों ही जी रहा हूँ? And nothing is going right in my life.
True.
Even though to an outsider it might seem like, hey, your life is perfect. आपके साथ क्या wrong हो सकता है? Like for example, you're perceived as a funny guy.
Correct. So they will always question कि आपके माँ बाप ने आपको अच्छी परवरिश दी, आपकी education अच्छी है, आपके पास पैसे हैं.
Right.
You look a certain way, like Divija looks, the way she looks, the way you look. आप healthy हो, तो problem है कहाँ?
हाँ.
And that's what I keep telling them, कि it is not about what you're looking at. It is about how they are not looking at the same thing.
And how they're feeling.
Exactly. So I can give you a compliment. Like, for example, somebody is going through BPD, which is borderline personality disorder.
Right.
If I tell Divija, and I'm just taking an example, not trying to pull you down. If I tell Divija, you look really nice today, a normal human being will say thank you very much and take it as a compliment. A person with BPD probably will understand कि, oh, I do not look good in any other thing but this. Or I was not looking good yesterday.
Oh.
It is a very different tangent of you accepting, knowing, acknowledging things. So let therapists, like psychologists do their bit. We can't be doing this at home. They're trained for it.
Right. Makes sense. So if you want to talk about it,
Sure,
there's absolutely no pressure.
Absolutely, no, go
but
ahead.
I just feel the more we talk about our personal experiences, the more it will normalize things for people.
True.
So then what was it in your life? What was that phase in your life when you felt like there was no reason to live?
4-5 years ago, I think, what was the reason for it is what I couldn't figure out. I drive a very big car. I stay in a very big palatial house. I have a good, healthy bank balance. I have a beautiful mother at home. I have 2 dogs. The ideal scenario. I have a younger brother who's married, who's got kids. I was dating this woman back then who I got married to eventually.
Oh.
I couldn't figure out. I would cry for no reason. I would stare for no reason. I just couldn't figure out. And a lot of people think, for example, a kid with ADHD is, अरे कितना है, हमारा बच्चा हमेशा एक्टिव रहता है, हमारा बच्चा बहुत शैतान है, हमारा बच्चा बहुत अच्छा ये ऐसा है, हमारा बच्चा बहुत वैसा है. A lot of these basic values, intrinsic values of a lot of people, we don't understand. I'll give you an example. When before Tare Zameen Par came as a movie, we had no idea what autism was.
Dyslexia.
Or dyslexia, sorry. We had no idea what dyslexia was.
Yeah.
हमारे 2 चांटे मार के, मेरी माँ ने 2 चांटे मारे, मुझे पहाड़ याद करवाए, tables 19 का table 18 का table.
Right.
वो 2 से याद नहीं होता तो 4 चांटे पड़ते थे, 4 नहीं होता तो 6 चांटे पड़ते थे.
So child had no other reason but to cope and build trauma inside.
Probably,
their head, yeah.
probably. So for me, I had no idea what was the reason, right? So I couldn't talk to a lot of people because I know they won't understand. That is the part I know.
So then I get it, but
Yeah.
I'm asking like
Yeah.
any other person who doesn't understand mental health very
Correct.
deeply would.
Correct.
So if everything was going fine, then why did you why did you have these thoughts that you didn't want to live anymore?
Because when I went to therapy, they told me what is the deeper meaning. It can be anything. It can be impact of me losing my father when I was 4. My that defense mechanism. A lot of kids get molested as kids, male or female.
Right, of course.
They shut that part down, so they have a massive insecurity with physical intimacy. Now, when they grow up and they are with their partners and they're still not being able to be very comfortable physically intimate part, they do not know what is wrong, and the partner doesn't know it either. So that is when people like Divija or a clinical psychologist or a counselor or a therapist or psychiatrist is where they come into play. So our problem is also we try to portray everything at home. Our home becomes self-proclaimed doctors. हमारे खांसी होती तो आपकी मम्मी निकल आती तुलसी का वो लेके, which is good, but for mental health they can't do it.
They'll be like तुम टाइम पे सो नहीं रहे हो इसलिए ये सब हो रहा है.
कुछ भी हो सकता है. माता आ गई है तुम्हें, तुम्हारा दिमाग खराब है, तुम्हारा यारी दोस्ती खराब है, तुम्हारी कंपनी खराब है, तुम्हारे उठना बैठना जिन लोगों के साथ वो सब पागल हैं, शराब मत पिया करो या ड्रग्स करने से हो जाते हैं. एंड देयर आर लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु डोंट इवन ड्रिंक, दे डोंट हैव ड्रग्स. व्हाट डू यू थिंक एवरीबॉडी
एंड यू नो दिस वन फ्रेंड टोल्ड मी कि उसके घर पे सब बोलते थे कि यू नो दिस इज हैपनिंग बिकॉज तुम टाइम पे नहीं सोते, टाइम पे नहीं उठते.
करेक्ट.
एंड शी वाज लाइक यार मैं सो ही नहीं पा, यू नो लाइक आई कांट फॉल asleep. I just can't.
But you realize it is not their family's fault also. They don't know any better.
Of course.
My mother is a B.Ed, MA B.Ed. I can't imagine her to be a psychologist. She studied for it. Divija has studied for it.
Yeah.
My mother hasn't.
Of course.
So she tries to support me. Whenever I cry, she's like, "Kyun ro raha hai?" What do I tell her? I do not know why I'm crying.
Yeah.
So where does the conversation start?
And for that generation, it is so hard to process कि इसको कुछ फील हो रहा है बट इसे नहीं पता इसे क्या फील हो रहा है और क्यों फील हो रहा है.
Yeah.
It's such a new thing.
Correct.
For like
Correct.
even a lot of us यार, like हमारे दोस्त नहीं समझते अगर, तो आप पुरानी जनरेशन से तो आप कितना ही एक्सपेक्ट कर लोगे.
And हर जनरेशन इतनी भी पुरानी और इतनी भी डिस्कनेक्टेड नहीं होती है.
मतलब
For example, I'll be 45 this year. I come from a generation where there was no cell phones, there was no internet. And considering what I do right now, I'm always on the net. And I have the state-of-the-art phone, state-of-the-art laptop. The good part is, or the bad part is, that the older generation wasn't that old. Is that I can absolutely disconnect with current generation and not connect with them, but rather connect with the old people. Because the basic theory of, for example, sleeping on time or getting up on time, for mental health people who are going through this, it is very hard for them to sleep.
Yeah.
So if they come into a routine, this is a routine. So if you come into a routine, it helps you actually. We don't listen to them. We don't. क्या सुबह कौन उठेगा? हम सुबह 4 बजे सोते हैं, Netflix देख रहे हैं, whatever.
But
I
then
think that's the struggle that they can't get into that routine. That's
Correct.
that's the symptom. It's not the reason.
Correct.
People see it as the reason for problems.
Exactly. Like, I mean, मुझे बहुत सारे लोगों ने बताया कि some people when they have mental health problems, some of them just can't sleep and some of them sleep a lot.
Yep.
They want to stay in.
Because they can't get out of the bed.
They can't get out of the bed.
Yep.
Like for example, when I went through anxiety, a major panic attack, which you know, I don't know if it was the same panic attack that lasted for days, but like there were days at stretch where I would just be in like hell.
True.
And I couldn't sleep.
True.
And usse pehle I'd spoken to someone who told me that, you know, like, I mean, I've been diagnosed with depression and I just keep sleeping and I binge eat a lot. I've started eating a lot. I keep sleeping. I avoid meeting friends. I don't want to step out. I can't even work. It's not like कि मेरे हाथ में time है.
Correct.
तो मैं काम कर लेती हूँ. वो नहीं काम कर पा रही थी.
So every aspect of a family will disconnect to it. So for example, when you're sleeping more, people will come ये आलसी है. When you're eating more, हमेशा इसको भूखी लगती रहती है. When you're not meeting your friends, इसमें attitude बहुत है. There is always a term which fixes to you and then you start living to that term. क्या है तो क्या कर ले तो
Defensive.
What else do you do? That's your comfort zone.
Right. But in your experience, was there like a personal incident that triggered it, or you still don't know why that suddenly happened in your life?
So I was happy to recover out of it. I just didn't want to even portray further as to what caused it because I had no idea.
Okay.
Had I had an idea, I probably would have avoided it.
Right.
So
Divija, you tell me, जब ऐसे लोगों को suddenly episodes होते हैं, for example, कभी तो first time होगा ना when you realize that, you know, you may be in depression or anxiety or so many other things.
Yeah.
So is it always caused by an incident in your life, या ये it can just come to you anytime?
It's caused by many factors. It's not like we can be like एक चीज़ हुई and उसकी वजह से depression हो गया. We actually go through many minor things every day. Like people will maybe body shame me in my family growing up, and then something will happen and then my friend will fall out with me and then I'll have a breakup. All of those things come together. So we actually need to notice our day-to-day life and not just focus on the day we got depression. Like mental health is not just pathological in the sense just clinical disorders. It's all of us. We all go through good days and bad days. So I think we need to focus on the bad days and see where they're taking us. Like, are we sitting and blaming ourselves for every single thing? Because that is one thing that actually contributes a lot to depression. Like the way you talk to yourself, that is one of the things. So it doesn't matter what's happening to you, you will anyway talk about yourself in a bad way, even if something good, like he mentioned, if somebody has borderline personality disorder, even if they don't have the disorder, there's many people who have low self-esteem. So if I have low self-esteem and somebody's like, oh, you're looking good, you're talking well, I'll be like, no, that's not true. They're lying. They're doing that to make me feel good.
Same. You know, every time someone gives me a compliment, I'm like, yeah, okay, I don't believe you.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't believe you.
Yeah.
And then people, sometimes people will say, oh, nahi, tu modest ban raha hai. And I'm like, I can mask it in humor. I can be very like funny about it, ki nahi yaar, whatever. But I know that when people tell me, मुझे कुछ अजीब सी feeling होती है. I'm like, why are people telling me things that are not true?
Yeah.
I just don't believe you.
True.
So, yeah. So these things are so relatable for so many people, but just the fact that they're not addressed enough, they keep it to themselves.
Yeah.
Like you don't tell people this कि यार मुझे genuinely नहीं समझ आता जब कोई मुझे compliment करता है तो मुझे believe करना चाहिए या people are just, is it pity? Is it a compliment or is it a pity compliment?
It's because people don't take it that seriously. Like you yourself, like you wouldn't see this as the biggest problem in your life or something, right?
Yeah.
So you'll just see it as a small thing, but then it will keep building up if you don't notice the pattern.
Yeah, like for example, जब मुझे पता चला that I have low self-esteem issues, I started noticing कि ऐसे हर aspect of my life में I will constantly doubt myself. Even if people tell me, I'll seek validation, but when I get the validation, I won't believe it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Correct.
So एक और चीज़, लोग बहुत कंफ्यूज होते हैं बीइंग सैड और बीइंग डिप्रेस्ड में. बहुत कैजुअली ये वर्ड बोला जाता है कि ऐसे मजाक में यार मैं तो डिप्रेशन में चला गया यार, मतलब मेरा तो रिजल्ट अच्छा नहीं आया, मैं डिप्रेशन में चला गया या आज मैं बहुत डिप्रेस्ड हूँ. डू यू थिंक कि जितना हम इसके बारे में बात करें उतना ही लोग कभी कभी ट्रिविलाइज भी कर देते हैं इन इशूज़ को?
Yeah, I mean, people glamorize it. They think it's cool to look depressed. But then again, that is also coming from the fact that people don't know what depression is.
Right.
Sadness and depression are on a spectrum, to be honest. At least that's how I see it. A disorder becomes a disorder when it's out of your control completely. Usse pehle, everyone goes through those feelings, like anxiety. Everyone goes through anxiety. It's not a disorder unless and until you reach that part where it's like GAD, generalized anxiety disorder.
जब पैनिक अटैक्स होते हैं.
हाँ, but panic attacks बिना disorder के भी होते हैं. That's the thing. The mental health, like I said, is like an everyday thing. We think it's only about disorders and extremes. It's not like that. It builds into that.
Mental health तो सबकी है ना.
हाँ, exactly.
Mental health तो सबकी है, तो like you said, to some degree तो everybody faces a lot of these things. Now they may not become disorders. ऐसा भी हो सकता है कि you have like she said, you feel anxious at times, but that may not mean that you have a
generalized
yeah.
GAD.
ठीक है. What do you have to say about this, Jeeveshu?
No, I think she's put it very nicely. The moment it becomes a disorder is when it is out of your hand. That is the best way to put it. We all go through it. And coming in and out of depression, if you're just being ignorant, how she said. You have no idea what depression is then. Do we get sad? Yes. I get sad looking at anybody who's begging outside right now in this sweltering heat.
Yeah.
I feel bad. I feel bad when a kid is begging. I feel bad when people are physically disabled. I feel bad when somebody is inhuman to animals. I feel bad about a lot of things. I'm not getting into depression at that point. And I'm not coming out of it either that fast. So like she said, it is either you trivialize it, you glamorize it, you romanticize. You have no idea what it is right now. And probably it is an onset of you getting into depression. Probably. But that is where people like her, people who are trained professionals are needed. It is okay to seek help is what we need to understand. And we don't take it. हम जाके साथ वाले घर के शर्मा जी से पूछते हैं तो फिर आपके बेटे को डिप्रेशन तो आपने क्या किया? कह रहे मैंने तुलसी वाली चाय पिलाई थी उसे. कह रहे एक्सीलेंट. सो हम तुलसी वाली चाय पिलाने लग जाते हैं.
Oh God.
तो तुलसी वाली चाय इज ग्रेट फॉर गला का जो भी दर्द है, खांसी है, जुकाम है, बट
मुझे ये समझ नहीं आता कि अगर आपको हल्का सा भी डाउट है एंड इफ यू कैन अफोर्ड थेरेपी जस्ट गो फॉर इट. दे
यू कांट बिकॉज़ तुम पागल नहीं हो.
That's also the thing. So even right now when we're talking about it, we're only seeing it in terms of depression, anxiety, like disorders kind of. You can actually have it out of your control and not have a disorder. Like even people who don't have disorders have it out of control and they need help sometimes. not just need, you should just go to therapy generally like you go to a doctor for your well-being. Mental health is not just these negative things, it's also well-being, like feeling good, feeling happy. That
Yeah.
is also mental health.
When I went to therapy for my anxiety, my therapist told me that I have something called anticipatory anxiety. कि चीज़ें होने से पहले मैं इतना ओवर थिंक कर लेता हूँ कि इट रूइंस एवरीथिंग इन माई डे. मतलब मुझे पता नहीं आगे क्या होने वाला है, दोनों तरफ हो सकता है, बट एक तो मेरा सिनिसिज्म कि मुझे हमेशा लगेगा कुछ गलत होगा, एंड आई एंटिसिपेट थिंग्स सो मच कि मतलब मैं I can't keep up with the day-to-day life because of it. And I sometimes, some minor things trigger it, like chaos triggers it. So मुझे best thing therapy में जाके ये पता चली कि मेरे trigger points क्या हैं. So for example, my therapist told me that you get hassled very easily. So you have to avoid chaotic situations. So like my mother has this habit कि वो सुबह उठते ही she'll ask you 100 questions. So like I've grown up in that environment कि मैं उठता हूँ, मेरी आंखें बाद में खुलती है, मेरे पे 10 questions पहले फेंके जाते हैं.
Correct.
So my day starts like that. एंड उस टाइम मुझे ऑब्जर्व हुआ दैट दैट्स व्हेन माई डे जस्ट वो एक एपिसोड इन द मॉर्निंग विल गिव मी एंग्जाइटी फॉर द होल डे. उसके बाद दिन जैसा भी हो, इट इज स्टार्टेड ऑन दैट नोट. So then my therapist told me that this is probably maybe your trigger point, that too many people talking to you at the same time is will make you chaotic. तो जैसे मैंने वो रिकग्नाइज किया ना, आई स्टार्टेड जैसे इंडियन फैमिलीज में आप दरवाज़ा बंद करके तो सो नहीं सकते. वो तो मेरे घर में कॉन्सेप्ट ही नहीं था. आई हैड टू इंट्रोड्यूस इट. I shut my door and sometimes it takes me a while to get up. Even now, even in general, मैं उठ जाता हूँ नींद से. जब तक मैं काम फील नहीं करता, मैं बाहर नहीं निकलता अपने रूम से. I don't want to interact with someone till the time I'm okay. जब तक मेरी नींद पूरी नहीं खुली है. वो मेरा trigger point है. So that's something that I learned in therapy, and I'm not going to therapy right now because I don't feel the need for it. But this has stayed with me, and this is something that I apply in my real life. That I just want to exit chaotic situations, or I want to simplify chaotic situations before panicking.
True.
So this is what therapy does, right?
Yeah, you're making boundaries actually with your family when you're doing this. This is a healthy thing. Like actually people, when they go through this, they just yell at their mother, or like they'll have a huge fight with their parents.
I mean, I'm not going to lie, I also did that. Yeah.
That's what happens normally, right? People who don't go to therapists, they don't know that they can actually make these boundaries without fighting.
Yeah.
You have to be calm. You have to do it again and again for them to understand.
Yeah, that's called murdering your parents. काफी healthy boundary हमारी अब. वो है ही नहीं उस side.
But it took them a while to understand कि हमारा
Yeah.
उनको तो like they didn't know that I went to
उनको आज
therapy.
भी नहीं समझ में आता है.
उनको अभी शायद उनको ये अगर वो सुनेंगे तो उन्हें पता चलेगा that I've been to therapy. I've never
सवाल ही
told
पता नहीं
them.
होता. बकवास सुना रहे थे.
I've never told them. So yeah, this is the first time they will know if they listen to this. My sisters knew, but I couldn't tell them because I knew that they may not understand, and I didn't want the pressure to explain it to people when I was going through it myself. I was like, मतलब मुझे enough awareness है कि मैं ये खुद कर सकता हूँ. And I'm independent enough to take care of the money aspect of it. I could afford it, so I went for it.
Correct.
And then I was like, ये इनको समझाना बाद में देखेंगे, अपने आप को पहले let's keep myself first. And that's what my therapist told me, that you have to do what makes you feel better right now.
True.
So yeah. अच्छा, मुझे दिविजा एक बात बताओ कि हम लोग जो मेंटल हेल्थ की बात करते हैं तो हमें लगता है पहले था डिप्रेशन, हर एक को लगता था उनको जो भी हो रहा है वो डिप्रेशन है. अब एंग्जाइटी. सो 2-3 टर्म्स है जो लोगों को फिर भी पता है, लाइक बाइपोलर पता है, डिप्रेशन पता है, एंग्जाइटी पता है, और क्या क्या चीज़ें जो नहीं पता, विच आर वेरी कॉमन.
बहुत सारे हैं.
Yeah, this question. There's an entire book called the DSM. उसी से हम diagnose करते हैं.
Okay.
So, I mean, mostly emotions are, like I said, it's on a spectrum. So, उसी emotion को extremes में ले जाओ तो वो disorder बन जाता है. Along with other symptoms.
That's a very simple way to put it.
Yeah,
actually.
so because like people are not going to understand if I just throw words, right?
So like a movie called A Beautiful Mind. Have you seen that movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's called hallucination probably, or schizophrenia.
Yeah.
So there are many. आप यहाँ पे if you go to any government hospital, you will see a lot of people doing a lot of funny stuff and like ये क्या कर रहा है? And they're just going through their struggle in their mind. And they are people who are not able to go to a proper, like an Escort or a Fortis or an Apollo or a Max. They go to places which is Deen Dayal Upadhyay, RML, AIMS, and they stand like there are like 700 लोग, 500 लोग, 600 लोग होता है वहाँ पे, जो रोज़ एक पर्ची कटा के एक साइकेट्रिस्ट के पास जाता है, दवाई लिखवाता है. वहाँ पे थेरेपिस्ट भी होते हैं, वो थोड़ा सेशंस लेते हैं.
We actually isolate these people like in our country. I'm sure you don't know that there are actually hospitals on the outskirts of Delhi, and these people who have major disorders, they're just there. Nobody knows about them. Their families mostly abandon them because they don't understand what they're going through, and they're just there. I saw that in my internships, and I was like, wow, I've studied psychology and I didn't know that this is true. There are big hospitals like he mentioned, but there are also smaller clinics and hospitals, and they're just like these homes where people are there and they're just getting taken care of, but they don't really have a proper life. If you think about it, their family doesn't care, or they don't know what to do also. It's not their fault.
Do you think like this is heartbreaking to hear, to be honest, because I think this is alienation ना, मतलब
Yeah.
आपको नहीं पता आप कैसे डील करो, तो उस वजह से जो इंसान जो खुद किसी चीज़ से सफ़र कर रहा है, who can't help it at, like, you know, they can't help it and they've been put in a place where they can't live life like others. It's heartbreaking. But do you think the more awareness there is about these things, the better it will be for people like them?
Of course, I mean, if you know more, then you will actually take them to the doctor before it gets to that extreme. Or you can actually tell when somebody is going through something, even
Mhm.
in their young adulthood. So you
Hmm.
don't have to wait. At least then people will know.
Hmm.
And then if people know, then there will be more professionals. Right now, there's very less psychologists. And honestly, even the psychologists that are there, not all of them are good. I have seen really bad psychologists also.
Okay.
So the more we know, there will be more educational institutions. The training will get better. That's what awareness is needed for.
ऐसा क्यों होता है कि मतलब in my experience, in my friends' experiences, most psychologists are women.
Yeah.
ऐसा है क्या?
Yeah, it is true. Like,
Was your psychologist a woman?
Yeah. Yeah.
Even my psychologist was a woman, and most of my friends who went to I think all,
yeah.
they were women.
Yeah.
Is there, I don't know, like,
I'll tell you why. There's like two reasons. One is that, first of all, there's this notion that men don't understand emotions. I mean, we all know
Yeah.
this stereotype.
yes, that's why we're here discussing
Thanks.
this.
Yeah.
Thanks for
Thanks.
validating the topic. Yeah.
Like, this is actually true because I was hiring a psychologist for my team, and I want to include male psychologists also. And I tweeted, what would you prefer? What gender of a therapist would you prefer? And everyone wrote women. For some reason, they were like, I think it'll be easier for me to open up. They don't realize that it's actually a gender bias. Like, who said that men can't understand your emotions? There are plenty of good male therapists, not in India.
I think for women, there may be a layer of safety, maybe. There may be like that underlying layer that
Yeah.
they'll feel safer with, like, opening up to a woman and being vulnerable to a
Yeah.
woman than being.
That is
Maybe-
understandable in those cases, specifically to
Yeah.
like sexual abuse. But even men wrote that they prefer a woman.
Like, men find it very hard to open up to other men, no?
Yeah.
So now, let's also touch upon, if we talk about mental health, we can't do that without touching upon grief,
Yeah.
which is such an important part about everyone's life. We've all lost loved ones. The first example that I can go back to was that when my grandmother passed away, I could see a difference between, I could see a pattern amongst the men and how they were dealing with grief. They were all trying to put a brave front because, you know, men are supposed to do things at a funeral, and it's heartbreaking. Like, you know, Hindu customs when someone passes away, and there are certain things that you have to do that like would shake up any human being. And I've still seen the male elders in my house put up such a brave front. Like, you could see that they're, you know, bursting with tears, but they would not cry openly.
True.
So let's talk about how men deal with grief.
It's not just men. Actually, grief is very complex. Everyone deals with it differently, and there's no right or
Yeah.
wrong. So I wouldn't really say them not processing in the moment is wrong. They have to do it in that moment because the customs are like that.
Mhm.
If they don't do that, then people will shame them. That is why they're doing it. Again, that is not, I'm not going to say that that's unhealthy or healthy because you
Mhm.
can't expect someone to start coping on the spot, right?
Yeah.
Everybody some people take years to deal with grief,
Hmm.
and that's normal. It's very common.
Right.
So on top of that, grief is like quite stigmatized in a society. People are expected, after a set number of days, they're expected to go back to work.
Hmm.
And like that's normal. And if they don't do that, people are like, this person is very affected. So they're seen in such a way that, like, if somebody grieves for many years, people will be like, why are they grieving for so many years? It's been so long.
Hmm.
So there is a lot of stigma about grief. It's not just a gender thing, also just grief in general.
Right. And I've only realized कि कितने different ways में grief can, you know, come at you at some unexpected moments.
Yeah.
And I'm still realizing it because I faced like a huge loss in my family. I lost a family member last year, and I think I spoke about it immediately, I spoke about the fact that I lost my sister.
I'm sorry.
And no, it's okay. It's okay. I talked about it at a very early stage. And that time I felt obviously devastated. But then it is after a month where it really hit me. And us time I was hyper productive. I was working. I just dived into work. I was like, okay, this has happened in my family. There is no way I can deal with this. And okay, it's happened. Now what? And I just didn't want to face it. So I just dived into work. And for one whole month, I just kept working. And then I remember, जब भी मैं break लेता था, it would just come back to me. And you sometimes feel that, and sometimes I would also, during that 1 month, I was also feeling guilty. Why am I not as sad as people are supposed to be? Like, why is it not affecting me? And then I was like, yeah, I am sad, but I'm not like crying my eyes out every night. But then 1 month later, I was actually crying my eyes out every night.
Yeah.
So I just realized it's so complex, and that's when I realized, yaar, I don't know if I'm equipped to handle this grief anymore. And it still comes back to me in random moments.
That's what grieving is. It's forever. You grieve forever. It's just that it changes the way it shows up. Like in the beginning, some people might cry, some people might not cry. Maybe some people will cry every few months. That grieving never stops. It's just it's a process. It's not like a symptom or something.
Yeah, because now that I think about it, I've realized that I'm changing as a person because of that grief. The way I look at things has changed, and sometimes it's happening in the background, and sometimes I'm really disturbed by it. Ki how is it still changing me after like almost a year?
Because you wanted to.
And as in?
So, for example, my father passed away when I was 4.
I'm sorry.
I'm 44. 40 years.
Yeah.
There are days when I miss him and I cry about it. Honestly, I don't remember the guy's face. I was 4. It's very hard to recollect any memory from there. So I look at his picture, I create a story, I create a persona, I put his face in. That's how I create my figment of imagination. So there are days when I feel bad about him not being there. There are days I consciously think of things that could have been better if he was around. There are days when I wonder how things would have been if he was around.
Imagine even after 40 years.
40 years. Because
Exactly.
at 4 I couldn't grieve. At 10 I didn't know what grieving was. And what happens in Indian families, the elder male child suddenly becomes the man of the house the day your father passes away. So I became the man of the house when I was 4. I started earning right after 12th. I'll be 45 this year. I don't remember when I was 18. And I was not born 45. Am I happy in my current situation? Yes. There are times when I wonder about my mother. How her life would have been different if my father was alive. I'm married to this lovely woman right now. Karwa Chauth comes in. We sit in a park where all those ritual customs go through. And I see a lot of older women who would be my mother's age. And I remember one day she was telling me a couple of years ago that when I was young, I used to ask her, why don't you go to that ceremony? Because I had no idea, right? No, it is not wrong. What I feel bad is now she doesn't remember my father's death anniversary, but I've never forgotten. His death anniversary is 6th of December. Invariably, I will know 6th December my father's death anniversary. She has started forgetting. And I don't blame her. I think she is now overcoming that grief at this stage now. And I think that is what Divija was trying to say. Would you grieve forever? Yes, you do grieve forever. Yes, you do. My dog passed away 5-6 years ago. Grieve him every day.
Yeah,
every day.
my dog also passed away a few months ago, and I think I've just been grieving a lot.
I grieve every day.
I have a dog, and this is the biggest fear in my life right
I
now.
think nobody talks about how pet loss really affects you. I feel like
Yeah, you always think, it's just like a pet.
it's
but
just a dog, but it's
it's
not.
family.
Yeah.
It's family.
So you grieve forever. Just answering out whatever she
Yeah.
was saying.
But then after such a big loss, I've genuinely considered therapy, and I actually may go for it, because with time I'm realizing that it is changing me as a person, and it seems like in a healthy way, but I'm not too sure if it's changing me in a healthy way, because it's changed the way I look at things. Like sometimes I genuinely feel that I can, like hear voices. I genuinely, and not like physically, but I can tell that
you can hear voices.
I mean,
Like sitting at home, like randomly?
No, not like physically hear voices, but I can hear, like I sometimes find myself having conversations with my sister.
Oh yeah. Oh
Like-
yeah.
like-
Like
that.
fantasy, dream.
Yeah, like I mean, and I can't like hear the voice, but
yeah,
I can
that would
feel
be
it.
hallucination. You're talking about fantasy of talking to her.
I can feel it.
Yeah.
I can feel her presence. I don't know. It's how to define it.
Yeah.
But it's also, I think, another thing I want to talk about grief is that have you ever felt that you will come at a point where you'll lose the memories also. Because I sometimes feel that I want to hold on to the grief also. I brought this topic up because there are so many people who had such terrible losses because
The
of
last
COVID.
2 years. Yeah.
COVID,
last 2-3
you know,
years,
and you know, so many families have suffered.
True.
It's something which is so heartbreaking, but
Correct.
it's so common right now.
Correct.
So I don't know if anybody listening to this relates with this, but I have this constant fear that if I let go of this grief, if I allow myself to get over it, I'll also lose the memories, because as you grow older, as years pass, you forget things.
Yeah, you do. You will.
And right now, I try every day to remember a new memory of her,
yeah.
so
Why?
that-
The question is, why are you doing that?
because I feel that I don't want to let go.
I
Why?
think you think that maybe you're not a good brother.
If you let go, you won't be the right brother.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
This is an unrealistic expectation from
Yeah.
yourself. A human being will forget. It doesn't make you less of a brother
Correct.
emotionally.
Hmm.
You're not a bad person for
Yeah.
moving on. That is actually what society wants you to do, move on, right? So it's not a bad thing.
Yeah, but पता नहीं मूवीज में ग्रीफ के इतने लेयर्स तो दिखाते ही नहीं है ना, मूवीज में तो
So
बस ये
तो
दिखा
सिर्फ जोर जोर से चेस्ट पे मारते हैं.
yeah, and so I just
वो
had
भी
to,
दूसरों के chest पे.
बैंगल्स तोड़ते हैं.
Died.
but a big tight hug to everyone who's suffered any loss in life, which a lot of people have in the
Yeah.
recent past. Yeah, and
On that positive and upcoming note, what is the next question?
the next question I'm just thinking where to drive this conversation, because you know, grief is also not just about people you've physically lost, but people you've also lost from your life.
There are people I want to lose in my life. Can we grieve over them?
I
Just
think
saying.
you sound like you want to celebrate that instead
Yeah.
of grieving
Like
that.
some people I want to grieve about.
Actually,
But
interestingly,
they aren't going anywhere.
people grieve toxic relationships as well. Like you don't
Of
want
course.
to be in that relationship, like family members, partner, whatever. But you don't want to be with them, but you also have lost them. So you need to understand that just because you're grieving doesn't mean that you want them back. It just means you're grieving that relationship. So this is also
Oh.
complicated.
Yeah. And Divija, tell me, how can therapy help people grieving? Because the thing is that in COVID, such unexpected, deaths have happened. People have passed away who didn't have any, it was not expected. Family
Yeah.
members did not see it coming, and it was a
Yeah.
shock.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure a lot of them, it may be a good option for them to go to therapy. So can you tell us about how therapy can help you?
So you're
with
talking
grief?
about grief counseling. That's like a specific
Okay.
type of thing.
Okay.
And in that, I think the main thing we would do is to reduce the shame and guilt and the complex feelings that you have. Like, for example, I've had clients, like the toxic relationship example, they did not want to be in the relationship, and then that person passed away. So there, you're like, I'm glad he's gone, but I also feel bad. So we help them process that and clarify those thoughts that what you're feeling is not wrong. You're not a horrible person for missing them. It's not that you want to be hurt on purpose. It's just that it's like that. So there's so much taboo and stigma. The first thing we need to do is remove that shame, guilt. Some people feel guilty. They're like, why did I not do enough? Maybe I should have done this. All these regrets.
Yeah, I also have them.
So grief is not just that feeling of missing them, right? It's also shame, guilt, regret.
Yeah.
All of these things. People blame themselves. People blame the person. Some people are angry at the person. Like, why did they leave? So
Yeah.
there's so many things that happen. So we help with those things and help them understand why.
So yeah, I mean, thanks for telling us that, because I'm actually considering. I didn't know that it's called grief counseling. I just thought it's the same as therapy, but it's good to know that it's a whole new department. It's not a department, but it's
There
it's
are
a whole
people
new
who
thing.
specialize in it. Like most therapists can do it
Okay.
because it's
All our
everyone.
dadis also, no? बैठो क्या हुआ?
Dadis to are born therapists.
Grief
But-
counselors.
क्या हुआ?
Dadis are the best. Yeah.
आलू के पराठे खाएगा पहले?
That's their
Thanks.
idea of that's their prescription. Aloo ke parathe. Okay, so this brings me to our next segment, which is called Kuch Karte Hain Yaar.
Oh God.
Yeah. So it's like Jeeveshu is like, और कितना करवाएंगे, कर तो लिया.
नहीं.
Okay, so I'll start with you, Jeeveshu.
Oh, God.
Tell us 3 things you wish someone had told you before.
That I'm worth it. It is okay to make mistakes,
Important.
and third, that probably I'm loved. That's it.
What about you, Divija?
that everyone actually has flaws. Nobody is perfect, even though it seems like they have it put together. Everyone goes through anxiety at some point. It's not just me.
Thanks, Divija.
And
Just taking compliment for no reason.
Yeah.
and people may look at me and criticize me, but then that doesn't change who I am. Like, if I am someone and they think I'm something else, that doesn't make me that something else. That is another thing.
That you
And-
wish someone told you.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the third thing is that I think it's good to be open-minded and keep changing. Don't try to just stay the same forever. I think when people have birthdays, we're like, happy birthday, say, stay the same, I love you. So I feel like you shouldn't stay the same. You should keep changing. So I used to think that I will always be this shy, awkward girl. My username is awkward goat for the same
Oh,
reason.
that's why it's awkward.
Yeah.
Word. Okay.
I was really awkward.
Yeah.
But, and I'd made it my entire personality. Not made it, but also made it.
Yeah.
So now I've realized that I can keep changing. I
Now
don't
you realize
have
that you're
to-
not awkward, you're just a goat.
No, I am
I'm
still
kidding,
quite
yes.
awkward. Like inside, I'm very awkward right
Yeah.
now.
How to lose friends 101.
Thank you so much for that. I'm gonna we're inching to the close. Sorry. Okay, so we're at the end of this episode. My last question is: how would you define the modern gentleman in just one word? Jeeveshu. That's a beautiful word.
Silence.
Divija, how would you define the modern gentleman in
I
one word?
prepared for this before coming, so
Oh,
I
you
have
did?
the answer already.
Okay, what is it?
Tell us.
A person who is flexible, not
Yoga?
yoga, not
Is-
yoga.
Is it one word or what? One sentence?
One word.
Oh, flexible
Flexible.
in thinking and yoga, sure, but
In thinking.
yeah.
Okay.
One word. Useless.
The modern gentleman
Yeah,
is useless.
I'm part of it. Please.
Okay. Please explain करेंगे आप ये
अच्छा ये क्या
statement?
ये
You
कैसा
asked for
explanation?
one word.
अच्छा ये one mark का question था. Okay, fine.
Extra marks नहीं मिलेंगे.
So thank you so much for being here and giving this your time. This was a very interesting conversation. Did you have a good time?
Yeah, I think we talked about substantial stuff.
Okay. What about you?
Oh yeah, I had a rocking time. I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I love it. I want to thank my mother.
I get the hint. Okay, cool.
6
Okay.
months we're not doing this.
All right, this was Ankush Bahuguna from The Gentleman Show by The Man Company. I'm signing off. I'll see you in the next episode and give us your feedback on social media @Ankush Bahuguna @The Man Company. ये मैं बोल के थक गया हूँ हर episode के end में. Bye.